Picture this. It's 2025, you're upgrading your rig, and you're staring at a shiny SSD box screaming 15,000 megabyte per second. Your heart races. Man, that sounds fast. But then you install it and meh. Your PC doesn't feel like it's breaking the sound barrier. What gives? Turns out those big numbers are more hype than help. Today, I'm pulling back the curtain on SSDs to show you how to pick the right one without falling for the marketing tricks. Stick with me, because by the end, you'll know exactly what to look for and what to ignore. Let's kick things off with the SSD family tree. Back in the day, we had HDDs, those clunky spinning drives that sounded like a tiny helicopter taking off. They maxed out at maybe 300 megabytes per second if you were lucky. Then came SATA SSDs, hitting around 600 megabytes per second. Big upgrade, right? But now we're in the M.2 NVMe era. Gen 3 SSDs can hit 3,500 mega per sec. Gen 4 doubles that to 7,000 megabytes per second. And Gen 5? A wild 15,000 megabytes per second. It's like going from a bicycle to a rocket ship. But here's the kicker. Unless you're launching rockets, you probably don't need that top speed. Before you grab the latest and greatest, though, let's talk compatibility. Your motherboard's the gatekeeper here. Got a newer board? It'll likely handle Gen 5 and scale back gracefully for Gen 3 or 4. But an older board? Plug in a Gen 5 SSD and it'll just yawn and run at Gen 3 speeds. It's like putting premium gas in a beat-up sedan. Nice thought, but the engine doesn't care. Check your manual or specs online. Oh, and size matters too. Most SSDs are 2280, 22mm wide, 80mm long, but some devices need smaller ones. Don't skip this step or you'll be stuck with a drive that doesn't fit. Now, let's tackle those flashy speed numbers, like 7,000 megabytes per second or 15,000 megabytes per second. That's sequential read-write speed, how fast the SSD moves big, unbroken files. Think copying a 50-gigabyte movie. Sounds cool, but here's the reality. Your daily grind isn't blockbuster transfers. It's a million tiny tasks, booting Windows, firing up Chrome, loading a game. That's where random read-write speeds and IOPS, input-output operations per second, steal the show. These measure how quick your SSD juggles small files. And trust me, that's what makes your system feel snappy. Sequential speeds? They're the sprinter showing off at the track. Random speeds? The marathon runner who keeps going all day. Here's a real-world example. I've got a Gen 4 SSD, a WD Black SN850X, rated at over 7,000 megabytes per second sequential. Copying a huge video file from another SSD? Blazing fast until I hit my USB-C dock, capped at 2 gigabytes per sec. Bottleneck city. Most external connections, even Thunderbolt, top out way below those box specs. And in daily use, like editing this script or loading Cyberpunk 2077, the sequential speed barely flexes. What I notice is how fast my apps open, and that's all random performance. So when shopping, dig into reviews for random speeds and IOPS. If the box doesn't say, assume it's hiding something. What makes an SSD tick, though? Let's break it down. First, there's DRAM or HMB. Think of them as the SSD's brain. DRAM's onboard memory that maps out your data, making everything zippy, especially for big files. HMB borrows a sliver of your PC's RAM instead. Lighter, cooler, often just as effective. I've used both. My SN850X has DRAM and feels like a beast for video edits, but my old HMB drive ran cooler and was perfect for my laptop. Neither's better. It's about your setup. Heavy user? DRAM's your friend. Casual? HMB's plenty. Next, the NAND type. SLC, MLC, TLC, QLC. It's how many bits each memory cell holds. SLC's 1 bit. Fast, tough, pricey. Think pro-grade gear. TLC's 3 bits. The sweet spot for most of us. QLC's 4. Cheaper, slower, less durable. I've got a QLC drive for backups. Works fine, but I wouldn't trust it for daily grind. TLC's my go-to. It balances cost and kick. Then there's the controller and firmware. The SSD's heart and soul. Good ones, like WD or Samsung's, keep things smooth. Cheap ones stutter. You can't always test this, so stick to brands with a track record. Don't sleep on the SLC cache either. It's a turbo zone where writes happen at warp speed. Until it fills up, then you're back to base NAND pace. My 1TB SN850X has a 300 gigabytes cache. I can dump huge files without a hiccup. A budget drive might cap at 100 gigabytes, slowing down mid-transfer. Bigger caches shine for power users. Check reviews to see the size, because manufacturers love dodging that spec. Capacity is another biggie. A 2TB SSD often outperforms a 1TB version of the same model. Larger cache, better endurance, measured in TBW or terabytes written. My 2TB drive's TBW is double my 1TB, and the cost per gigabyte drops. If you can swing it, go big. It's future-proofing that pays off. Even for budget folks, a 500GB SSD beats any HDD hands down. Just add a cheap hard drive for bulk storage. So, Gen 5 worth it? Nah, not yet. They're wallet busters, heat monsters, and overkill for 2025's real-world needs. I tested a Gen 5 rig once, insane benchmarks, but my game loads barely budged versus Gen 4. Unless you're editing raw 16K footage daily, Gen 4's the ceiling, and Gen 3's still a champ. For office work, a Gen 3 like the WD Blue SN580 is snappy and cheap. Gaming? SATA's fine, but a Gen 4 like the SN750 gives a slight edge. Think seconds, not minutes. Content creators, grab a Gen 4 SN850X. It chews through 300GB files like nothing. Here's my hot take. I once chased the fastest SSD, blew my budget, and barely felt it. Now I match the drive to the job. A $70 Gen 3 handles my daily grind better than a $200 Gen 5 ever could. Look past the hype. Random performance, cache size, and your actual workload matter more than peak speeds. Brands like WD and Samsung deliver. No-name deals might leave you lagging. So, there you go. Choosing an SSD in 2025 isn't about the biggest number. It's about what fits you. Gen 3 for basics, Gen 4 for power. Skip Gen 5 unless you're flexing. Check compatibility, dig into random specs, and size up your needs. Armed with that, you'll snag the perfect drive without wasting a dime.
If you enjoy this video, please like, share, subscribe, and hit the bell to the later update from my channel. Thank you for watching till the end, and see you in the next video.